Rep. Carter, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank all the witnesses for being here. I'll go ahead and get this out of the way. Georgia's the #1 forestry state in the nation, and I'm very proud of that. Thank you, Ranking Member Graves, for bringing that to my attention before I get started. Mr. Mills, I wanted to direct some questions to you. Look, we all agree. We all agree that we need to modernize our grid. Everybody here, we disagree on how we do it, but we all agree we need to modernize it. I don't think there's any question about that. We know that our economy is electrifying more and more, and as a result of that, we've got to have both generating capacity and grid capacity, and we've got to increase that significantly. And again, I think everybody agrees with that. You make that point, Mr. Mills, in your testimony, and I appreciate that very much. And I'm not against using any particular or any specific type of form of generation, whether it be wind, solar, or whatever. I'm an all of the above type guy as far as the energy goes, but the reliability and the resiliency are extremely important to me, and also the affordability. You just mentioned when we were talking about getting solar power from Arizona and you know, the cost of the transmission lines. Obviously, that is something that would deter us. I mean, that makes sense to anybody. I think the third grader could understand that. But you also mentioned in your testimony that if we were to primarily switch to solar and wind, that the battery storage would that's necessary for 12 hours, we would need to spend almost $1 trillion on batteries alone. Not to mention how we make those batteries, the energy that it takes, and to make those batteries, and what we do after they're no longer being used. Those are things that we should consider as well. But the one thing that I'm really concerned about, again, is the reliability and the resiliency. And I wanted to ask you, you understand, just like all of us do, what's going on right now with rising energy costs. You've seen it, we've all seen it. In light of that, what can we expect to happen if the electricity rates, I should say, if we were to make such a transition as some have described here, and that is to try to go totally to wind and solar and do away with all the other sources?
Well, thank you, Congressman. I think we know the answer because it's already happening in the United States and around the world. Electric rates are going up, not down. And there's a one-to-one correlation in European nations and in the United States, in U.S. regions. As more wind and solar capacity is added per capita, electric rates are going up. That's not a subsidy effect in the sense the subsidies should keep the rates down because the capital costs are shifted from the ratepayers to taxpayers broadly. That's where the subsidies come from. So the fact that electric rates are rising, in fact, in Xcel service territory, they've gone from a few percent wind plus solar to about, I think they're at 10 or 12% now, maybe 15. And the average cost of electricity for the average homeowner has gone from $800 a year to $1,600 a year. So, you know, they're following the path that Commission wants and that we all would like to have more wind and solar, but it costs more money. It has been costing more money. The idea that it'll get cheaper in the future is entirely anchored on forecasts, not on experience. What's actually happening is solar module prices have gone up 50% in the last 2 years. Battery costs are forecast to rise this year. Wind turbine costs have stopped, prices have stopped going down, are going to rise slightly this year, all because of the commodity inputs for them. Commodities account for 60 to 70% of the cost of making solar panels, about 30% of the cost of making wind turbines. When commodity prices escalate, it ripples through. It ripples with other things too, for fertilizer and food. Right. But that's the path that we're on. I've
just got a minute left, and you just answered my second question. I appreciate that about the increase in cost, and obviously we all understand that. But how can we ensure that our transition, if we were to transition too quickly, obviously we're going to bring into light the reliability and the affordability. But how can we transition significantly, investing in the grid in a way that doesn't necessarily put this undue pressure on electricity rates and how we could reduce affordability?
So I'm sorry, the answer is to go slower, and no one likes that answer. because to get the cost down of the technologies we'd like, they're going to take a lot longer to get cheap. She's mentioned quickly, hydrogen on a unit of energy delivered basis is about 300% more expensive than natural gas. There's no path to making hydrogen as cheap as natural gas anywhere visible in any of the physics or physical chemistry. So it works. You can electrolyze water and make hydrogen. It doesn't matter that you use solar panels to do that. It produces very expensive energy. It's a solution. I like hydrogen fuel cells personally. We can burn it in engines. It's just very expensive.
Good. I know I'm out of time and I'll yield back, but thank you, Mr. Mills, for making what I consider to be very important points. Look, we all want the same thing, but how we get there is, I think, where we differ.
All right. Next up